The sound of the slap was so loud it silenced the entire restaurant. It wasn't just a slap, it was the sound of humiliation, the sound of a poor girl's dignity shattering on a marble floor. Sarah clutched her burning cheek, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. Red wine, vintage, expensive red wine, was dripping down the pristine white tablecloth and onto the designer suit of the young, arrogant businessman sitting at table 4. He was furious. He looked at Sarah like she was a cockroach he wanted to crush under his shoe. "Do you know how much this suit costs?" the man screamed, raising his hand to strike her again. "You clumsy, good-for-nothing wretch." Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the second blow. Her heart was hammering against her chest like a trapped bird. Under her uniform, against her skin, the silver pendant her mother gave her burned cold, the only thing she had left in this world. But the blow never came. Instead, a deep, thunderous voice cut through the air. "If you touch her again, Marcus, you will lose everything." Sarah opened her eyes. The older man sitting across from the angry businessman had stood up. He wasn't looking at the stain on the tablecloth. He was staring directly at Sarah's neck. He was staring at her pendant with a look of absolute ghostly shock. But before we find out why that man looked like he had seen a ghost, and how that single moment changed the destiny of the girl with nothing, we have to go back. We have to go back to where the nightmare began. 2 months earlier, the sun was setting over a massive mansion in a highbrow area of Lagos. It was the kind of house that screamed old money, but inside there was no peace. There was only the suffocating silence of betrayal. Sarah, who had just turned 20, was standing in the center of the living room. Her hands were trembling. Across from her sat Brenda, her stepmother. Brenda was a beautiful woman, but it was a cold, sharp kind of beauty. She was sipping tea from a china cup, looking at Sarah over the rim with eyes that held zero warmth. Next to Brenda sat Mr. Henderson, her late father's lawyer. Mr. Henderson was sweating, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, refusing to meet Sarah's eyes. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "This is my father's house. I grew up here. Where am I supposed to go?" Brenda placed the teacup down slowly. The sound of the ceramic hitting the saucer was like a gavel banging in a courtroom. "Sarah, darling," Brenda said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that barely covered the venom underneath. "You are an adult now. You're 20 years old. It is time you fended for yourself. As Mr. Henderson has just explained, the will is quite clear. Your late father left the estate to me and my children. You were not mentioned." Sarah turned to the lawyer. "Mr. Henderson, you knew my father. He loved me. He would never leave me on the street. My mother, my biological mother, she helped build this empire before she died. How can I be left with nothing?" Mr. Henderson cleared his throat, shuffling the papers on the coffee table. "The law is the law, Miss Sarah. The documents are signed. The property, the accounts, the cars, everything has been transferred to Mrs. Brenda. You have no legal claim here." It was a lie, a massive, wicked lie cooked up in the darkest corners of greed. But Sarah didn't have the money or the power to fight it. Brenda stood up then, smoothing down her silk dress. She walked over to Sarah, leaning in close. The smell of her expensive perfume was overpowering. "You have always been a reminder of a woman who is dead and gone," Brenda hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper so the maids wouldn't hear. "I tolerated you while your father was alive, but he is gone now. And I am done pretending. You are an outcast here, Sarah, you don't belong." Brenda snapped her fingers. "Security." 2 large men in uniform stepped into the living room. Sarah looked around frantically. Her half-sister and half-brother, Brenda's children, were watching from the staircase. They were teenagers, old enough to know this was wrong, but they said nothing. They just watched with blank stares. "Pack a bag," Brenda commanded. "1 bag, you have 10 minutes. Anything you leave behind belongs to us." 10 minutes, 20 years of life reduced to 10 minutes. Sarah ran to her room, tears finally blinding her. She didn't pack clothes. She packed the photo album of her mother. She grabbed her birth certificate. And she clutched the silver pendant around her neck, a unique design, half of a heart with strange, intricate carvings. Her father had told her that her mother put it on her neck before she died when Sarah was 2. It was the only piece of jewelry Brenda hadn't managed to snatch yet because Sarah never took it off. The walk to the gate was the longest walk of her life. As the heavy iron gate slammed shut behind her, thunder rumbled in the sky. It was as if the heavens were angry on her behalf. Sarah stood on the wet asphalt of the street, a single duffel bag in her hand, looking back at the only home she had ever known. She had no money, no degree yet, as Brenda had stopped paying her tuition immediately after the funeral. She was alone in Lagos, a city that eats the weak for breakfast. Hey my people, let's pause for a second. Can you imagine? Just picture it. You are sleeping in your father's house one day, a house your own mother helped build with her sweat and blood, And the next day, a woman who entered the picture years later throws you out like yesterday's trash. It boils my blood just telling you this. If you've ever seen a family turn on each other over money, you know exactly how painful this is. It's a cold world out there, fam. But you know what they say, the axe forgets but the tree remembers. Brenda thinks she has won. She thinks she's the queen of the castle. But she forgot one thing, the truth always has a way of coming out, usually when you least expect it. If you're rooting for Sarah to survive this, smash that like button right now. Let's show her some love in the comments because, trust me, she's going to need it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel and comment where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story is traveling. Now let's get back to the streets. Night is falling and Sarah has nowhere to go. Sarah walked for hours. She walked until her feet blistered in her sandals. The Lagos reality hit her fast. She couldn't go to her friends. Most of them were fair-weather friends from wealthy families who would look down on her new status. She was too ashamed to beg. By the time she reached the mainland, away from the island luxury she was used to, it was pitch black. She found a small, rundown restaurant, a bucker, that was still open. The smell of spicy stew and exhaust fumes filled the air. She went inside, clutching her bag. The owner was a man named Mr. Patrick. He was a short man with a potbelly and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, but he seemed kind enough at the moment. "I can wash plates," Sarah pleaded, her voice trembling. "I can clean. I can serve. Please, sir, I just need a place to work. I don't even need a salary right now, just let me sleep in the store at the back and give me food." Mr. Patrick looked her up and down. His eyes lingered a little too long on her figure, but Sarah was too desperate to notice the red flags. "You are a pretty girl," Mr. Patrick said, chewing on a toothpick. "Too pretty to be homeless, but okay. You can start tomorrow. You wash the plates, you clean the floor, you can sleep in the storeroom with the rice bags. But you have to be up by 4:00 a.m. to boil the meat." "Thank you, oh thank you, sir." Sarah nearly collapsed with relief. For the next few weeks, this was Sarah's life. She went from wearing designer dresses to scrubbing greasy pots with blackened sponges. Her hands became rough. Her hair was always tied back in a messy bun. She slept on a thin mat between bags of rice, smelling of onions and crayfish. But she worked hard. She worked harder than anyone else because she knew she was one step away from sleeping under the bridge. One fateful night, about 3 weeks later, the restaurant had closed. The other staff had gone home. Sarah had just finished taking her bath in the small, makeshift bathroom behind the kitchen. She wrapped a faded wrapper around her chest and was heading back to the storeroom to sleep. Suddenly, she heard the heavy click of the front door lock. Sarah froze. Everyone else had gone. It should have just been her. She turned around and saw Mr. Patrick standing there. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was sweating, and he had a strange, hungry look in his eyes as he loosened his belt. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt very small and very tight. "Mr. Patrick," Sarah's voice shook. I'm going to sleep now." "Sarah," he said, taking a step toward her. "I've been very nice to you. I gave you a job when nobody else would. I gave you a roof over your head." "Yes, sir, and I am working hard to repay you," she said, backing away until her back hit the wall. "Working hard is not enough," Mr. Patrick grinned, stepping closer. The smell of alcohol on his breath was strong. "It's cold tonight. A young girl like you shouldn't be sleeping alone. If you want to keep this job, if you want to keep this roof, you need to show me some appreciation." Sarah clutched the wrapper tighter around her chest. Her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. She had lost her home. She had lost her inheritance. She had lost her dignity. Was she about to lose her body too just to survive the night? Mr. Patrick lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "Don't be shy," he growled. Sarah screamed, but the restaurant was closed. The shutters were down and the street outside was empty. Is this how Sarah's fight ends? Trapped in a dark kitchen with a predator who holds her life in his hands. She has a split-second decision to make. Fight and risk being thrown back into the cold, dangerous night, or surrender and lose the last piece of herself she has left. The choice she makes in the next 10 seconds will determine if she ever makes it to that high-end restaurant in Abuja, or if her story ends right here in the dirt. What would you do? Would you run into the darkness or do whatever it takes to survive? You don't want to miss what happened next. The escape is going to be terrifying. Stay tuned. The kitchen air was thick with tension and the smell of stale oil. Mr. Patrick's hand was heavy on Sarah's arm, his grip like a vice. In that split second, Sarah didn't see her boss anymore. She saw a monster. She saw the same greed that was in her stepmother's eyes, just wearing a different face. "Don't be shy," he had growled. Sarah didn't think. Instinct took over. With a scream that tore through her throat, Sarah stomped her heel down, hard onto Mr. Patrick's foot. He howled in pain, his grip loosening just enough for her to twist away. "You witch," Mr. Patrick roared, stumbling back into a stack of metal trays. They crashed to the floor with a deafening clang. Sarah didn't wait. She didn't grab her toothbrush. She didn't grab her extra pair of jeans. She snatched her handbag from the counter, shoved her feet into her worn-out slippers and bolted for the back door. "If you walk out that door, don't you dare come back," Mr. Patrick screamed after her, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "You are fired, do you hear me? You are nothing, you will starve on these streets." Sarah burst out into the cool night air, the metal door slamming shut behind her. She didn't stop running. She ran until her lungs burned, until the restaurant was just a speck in the distance, until the tears streaming down her face mixed with the sweat on her skin. She collapsed near a bus stop, gasping for air. She checked her bag. She had less than 2,000 naira to her name. No job, no home, no family. The darkness of the Lagos night felt like it was closing in on her. That night was the longest night of Sarah's life. She couldn't afford a hotel, and it was too late to go to the few friends she still had contact with. She made her way to a busy motor park, where the interstate buses loaded. It was loud, chaotic, and smelled of diesel and roasted corn, but it was safer than being alone on a dark street corner. She found a corner on a wooden bench near a woman selling bread and tea. She curled up, clutching her bag to her chest. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every loud voice made her jump. She touched the silver pendant at her throat, her anchor. "I will not break," she whispered to herself, shivering in the cold wind. "Mom, please watch over me, don't let me break." She drifted into a restless sleep, waking up every 20 minutes to make sure her bag was still there. She was a princess turned pauper, sleeping among touts and travelers, fighting just to see the sun rise. "Hey fam, let's take a breather here. Can we just appreciate Sarah's strength for a second? A lot of people would have given in. When you are hungry, homeless and desperate, and someone offers you a way out in exchange for your dignity, it takes a warrior's spirit to say no. Whatever you are going through right now, whatever pressure you are facing to compromise your values just to survive, don't do it. Your dignity is the one thing nobody can take from you unless you give it to them." Sarah chose the hard road, the lonely road, but she kept her soul intact. If you respect that hustle, drop a respect in the comments right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join the family. We are telling real stories here. Now the sun is coming up. Sarah survived the night, but the hunger is real and the clock is ticking. Let's see if fortune finally smiles on her. The morning sun in Lagos doesn't gently wake you up, it hits you with heat and noise. Sarah woke up with a stiff neck and a rumbling stomach. She used a sachet of water to wash her face and rinse her mouth. She looked like a shadow of her former self, but her eyes were determined. She remembered Jessica. Jessica was an old friend from her university days before the incident. Jessica wasn't from a super-rich family like Sarah's used to be, so Sarah's stepmother had always looked down on her, but Jessica had a good heart. With trembling fingers, Sarah used the last of her airtime to make the call. "Sarah," Jessica's voice was high with surprise. "Oh my God, where have you been? Nobody has seen you in months. I heard about your dad, I'm so sorry." "I need help, Jess," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "I'm not asking for money, I need a job. I'm at the motor park at Yaba, I have nowhere to go." "Stay there," Jessica commanded, "I'm coming." 30 minutes later, Jessica's small Toyota pulled up. When Jessica saw Sarah, her clothes rumpled, dark circles under her eyes, she burst into tears and hugged her tight. She took Sarah to her small apartment, let her shower, gave her fresh clothes, and fed her the best meal Sarah had eaten in weeks. "I don't have much," Jessica said as Sarah ate ravenously, "but I have a connection. My cousin manages a very big high-end restaurant called the Royal Hibiscus. It's not a roadside bucker, Sarah. It's where the senators and big business tycoons go to eat. They are looking for waitresses, the pay is good." Sarah looked up, hope flickering in her chest. "Do you think he'll hire me? I don't have my degree certificate." Brenda locked it in the study. "You speak well, you have class, and you're beautiful," Jessica said firmly. "Clean up, put on this dress, and let's go. Today is the day your life changes." They drove to the city centre. The Royal Hibiscus was intimidating. It had glass walls, gold chandeliers, and a parking lot full of SUVs that cost more than a house. Sarah felt small. She felt like the fraud Brenda said she was. But she remembered the cold floor of the motor park, and she straightened her back. The manager, Mr. Stevens, was a tall man with a strict face and a clipboard. He looked Sarah over skeptically. "We need refinement here," Mr. Stevens said, his nose in the air. "We serve the elite. One mistake, one spilled drink, one rude comment, and you are out. Can you handle pressure?" "I can handle anything, sir," Sarah said, looking him dead in the eye. After surviving Brenda and Mr. Patrick, serving food seemed like a walk in the park. Fine, Mr. Stevens checked his watch. We are short-staffed tonight. We have a delegation of investors coming in from Abuja. You start now. Consider tonight your trial, sink or swim. Sarah was thrown into the deep end. The kitchen was a war zone of shouting chefs and sizzling pans. The dining area was a hushed temple of luxury. Sarah learned the menu in record time. She moved gracefully, her upbringing in a wealthy home helping her navigate the etiquette of the rich. By 8:00 p.m. the restaurant was packed. Sarah was exhausted, her feet throbbing in the borrowed heels, but she was doing it. She was surviving. Then the atmosphere in the restaurant changed. A black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled up to the front, followed by a security escort. The doors opened, and Mr. Stevens started snapping his fingers at the staff. Table 1, everyone alert, the VIPs are here. Sarah wiped her sweaty palms on her apron. She watched as 2 men walked in. The first was a young man, maybe late 20s. He was handsome but had an arrogant sneer on his face. He wore a suit that screamed money and walked like he owned the very air everyone breathed. This was Marcus. Behind him walked an older man. He was different. He had greying hair and a face etched with lines of sorrow and wisdom. He didn't look arrogant, he looked tired. He walked with a heavy cane, though he looked strong enough not to need it. This was Charles. Sarah, Mr. Stevens hissed, shoving a tray of expensive vintage wine into her hands. Table 1, pour the wine. Do not look them in the eye unless spoken to. Do not mess this up. Sarah took the heavy tray. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs. A strange feeling washed over her, a cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She walked across the polished floor toward table 1. The sounds of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of her own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Marcus, the young arrogant man, was already complaining about the lighting as he sat down. The older man, Charles, sat silently, staring at the menu with a distant look. Sarah approached the table. "Good evening, sirs," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "Welcome to the Royal Hibiscus." Marcus looked up, annoyed that someone dared to speak to them. He looked at Sarah, scanning her face with a dismissive sneer. "Just pour the wine," Marcus snapped. "And be quick about it. We are discussing millions of dollars here, not chatting with the help." Sarah nodded, biting her lip. She reached for the bottle of red wine. As she leaned forward to uncork it, the silver pendant hidden beneath her shirt swung forward. It didn't come out fully, just the chain catching the light. But as she struggled with the cork, Marcus, impatient and rude, slammed his hand on the table to emphasize a point he was making to the older man. "I told you the deal must be signed today," Marcus shouted. The sudden bang startled Sarah. Her hand slipped. Time seemed to slow down. The bottle of vintage red wine tipped. Sarah gasped, trying to catch it, but it was too late. The dark red liquid, looking almost like blood, arced through the air. It wasn't heading for the floor. It was heading straight for Marcus's pristine white designer shirt. In that fraction of a second, Sarah knew her life was over. She knew the job was gone. She knew the piece she had found for 5 hours was about to be destroyed. But she didn't know that this mistake was about to unlock a secret that had been buried for 18 years. The wine hit the shirt, the scream was coming. What happens when a girl with nothing ruins the night of a man who has everything? And why is the older man staring at her with that strange intensity? The slap heard around the world is coming up next, and you do not want to miss this explosion. The expensive red wine hit Marcus's designer suit, spreading across his chest like a blooming stain of failure. For a man who measured his worth by his appearance and his assets, this was more than a spilled drink. It was an insult. Marcus didn't just shout, he roared. He launched himself out of his seat, knocking his chair backward. "You idiot, you absolute incompetent imbecile," Marcus shrieked, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet, luxurious restaurant. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This is 100,000 naira down the drain, and you're going to pay for every single penny." Sarah stood frozen, the empty wine bottle still clutched in her hand. The humiliation was total. Mr. Stevens, the manager, was already sprinting across the room, his face a mask of panic, terrified of losing a massive account because of a clumsy server. Before Mr. Stevens could reach them, Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm, his fingers digging into her skin with painful force. "You people are all the same, always destroying what you can't afford. I am going to make sure you never work again in this city, you hear me?" He was shaking her roughly. As he did, the thin fabric of Sarah's cheap, borrowed apron tore near the neckline. The apron shifted, and the silver pendant, the half-heart, intricately carved piece, slipped out from underneath her borrowed uniform shirt and dangled clearly against her collarbone. Marcus didn't see it. He just saw the girl who ruined his suit. He drew his arm back and delivered a scorching, hot slap across Sarah's face, just as we saw at the start. The sound was a loud, sickening crack that turned every head in the room. Sarah stumbled, tears of pain and fury finally overflowing. She tasted copper in her mouth. She was ready to fall to the ground and disappear. That's when the second man, Charles, the older, powerful investor, finally moved. He stood up so quickly that his heavy walking cane clattered to the floor, forgotten. He wasn't looking at Marcus's wine-stained shirt, the crying waitress, or the horrified manager. His eyes were locked, absolutely paralyzed, on the silver pendant dangling from Sarah's neck. Charles himself was wearing an identical pendant, the matching half-heart, tucked discreetly under his tie. He hadn't worn it in public for years, but he wore it now. "What is the meaning of this, Marcus?" Charles's voice was low, deadly quiet, and utterly unrecognizable. Marcus, still vibrating with anger, barely acknowledged him. "She spilled the wine, Charles. She is incompetent. I'm teaching her a lesson. Just let me handle this, sir. It's nothing." Marcus raised his hand again, ready to grab Sarah's arm and drag her out. That's when Charles did what nobody, least of all Marcus, ever expected. Charles swung his own hand back and delivered a thunderous slap across Marcus's face. It was the hot, dirty slap the storytellers would talk about for years. The force was so immense that Marcus, who was 20 years younger and much fitter, spun around, his arrogance evaporating in a single moment of shock. Silence fell over the royal hibiscus, heavier than the moment before. "If you touch her again, Marcus," Charles said, his voice now a pure, cold steel blade, "you will lose everything. The deal is off. Get out of my sight." Marcus stumbled back, clutching his cheek, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. He knew that tone. He knew that the man who had just slapped him was the only person who could crush his entire business empire without blinking. "Charles, sir, I don't understand." "You don't need to understand," Charles stated, stepping around the table. He walked right past Marcus, ignoring the wine and the manager, and stopped directly in front of Sarah. Sarah was trembling, holding her stinging cheek, still trying to process the slap she received, let alone the one she just witnessed. She was staring at Charles, whose face was wet with tears, not from pain but from something deeper, something ancient. He didn't speak. He just reached out, his powerful, trembling hand lifting the pendant from her neck. He held it next to his own. They were a perfect match, two halves of one heart. Charles looked at Sarah, then back at the pendant. "My God," he whispered, his voice cracking. "My sister, you have your mother's eyes. You are her daughter, aren't you? You are Alice's child. Drop a like if you're hooked, fam." Did you see that? The slap, the connection. That moment when the two halves of the heart finally met after all these years. This is why you need to subscribe to join this storytelling family. Charles, the powerful investor who holds the keys to Marcus's destiny, is Sarah's long-lost uncle, the twin brother of the mother she lost. And now he has found her in the most dramatic, desperate way possible. Comment where you're watching from. Are you watching from United States, Canada, South Africa, Abuja, London? Tell me what you think will happen next. Now let's get back to Sarah. The tears had stopped. The fear is gone. A new emotion is taking over, hope. A hope so big it could change the entire world. Charles didn't wait for an answer. He took off his expensive suit jacket, draped it gently over Sarah's shoulders, and wrapped his arm around her. "Stevens," Charles barked, addressing the petrified manager. "This young woman is coming with me. Settle her employment immediately. She is my family." He guided Sarah past the stunned crowd, past a shell-shocked Marcus who was muttering apologies, and out to the front entrance. Charles's security detail, a group of large men who hadn't moved an inch until their boss did, rushed forward. They formed a tight, protective shield around Sarah and Charles. The massive black G-Wagon that brought Charles to the restaurant now became Sarah's sanctuary. Inside the quiet, air-conditioned vehicle, Charles held Sarah's hands tightly. "They told me you died, little one," Charles said, his voice husky with emotion. "When my twin sister Alice, your mother, died, they said you died too shortly after. My father, your grandfather, searched for years, but they hid you so well." "Who told you that?" Sarah whispered, still dazed, still clutching the lapels of his jacket. "Your father's wife," Charles stated, his expression hardening. "Brenda, and that wretched lawyer Henderson. They knew that if I, the sole heir of the family name, knew my sister had a living daughter, you would be the next in line to the entire family wealth, the wealth that Alice brought into your father's life. They wanted you gone so their own children would inherit everything." Charles leaned closer, his eyes intense. "Sarah, listen to me. Your mother and I were inseparable. When your father married her, my father, your grandfather, set up an ironclad inheritance structure. He put the majority of the fortune, the true fortune, in an untouchable trust only accessible by his children or their immediate direct descendants. That meant you. Brenda and your father's lawyer only managed to steal the surface assets, the house, the cars, the secondary accounts, but the core empire. They have no idea it even exists because they thought you were dead. He paused, looking at the silver half-heart pendant around her neck. This pendant is the key. It's the symbol of the twin bond passed down for generations. The trust fund has been waiting, growing for 18 years. He pulled a phone from his pocket and made a quick, decisive call. "Pilot," he said sharply. "Cancel all meetings in Lagos. Prepare the private jet. We are heading to Abuja tonight. And book 2 rooms at the presidential suite at the Transcorp Hilton. I need my best security team on standby." He hung up, looked at Sarah, and smiled for the first time. A genuine, warm smile that reminded her of the hazy memories she had of her mother's face. "Don't worry about Marcus," Charles assured her. "I have already ruined him. He was depending on my investment to save his bankrupt firm. He has nothing left but the wine stain on his suit." Charles reached out and gently touched the bruise on Sarah's cheek. "You have been through hell, my child, but your nightmare is over. Justice starts now, and it starts with Brenda and Henderson." Sarah looked out the window as the car sped through the Lagos traffic, leaving the bright lights and the smell of fear behind. She thought of Brenda sipping tea in her mansion, feeling secure. She thought of Mr. Patrick, who thought he had won. And she realized that their world was about to shatter just as violently as that glass of wine. Sarah is no longer the girl scrubbing floors and sleeping in parks. She is the heiress to a vast, secret fortune, now under the protection of a fiercely powerful uncle. But will Charles's power be enough to dismantle Brenda and the crooked lawyers' network? The power couple who stole her life won't surrender their ill-gotten wealth easily. What intricate web of lies did Brenda weave to convince the world that Sarah was dead? And how will they react when the outcast walks back into their life, backed by power they can't even fathom? The battle for the billions begins in the capital city of Abuja. Stay tuned for the drama that next. The private jet sliced through the night sky, carrying Sarah away from the chaos of Lagos and toward a destiny she couldn't yet grasp. Charles, her uncle, was watching her with an expression of quiet intensity. Sarah was wrapped in his designer jacket, her swollen cheek throbbing, but for the first time in months she felt safe. "We need to move fast," Charles said, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. "Brenda and Henderson are ruthless. Once they realize you're not just some poor girl living in a park, they will try to cover their tracks. But we have something they don't, the pendant." Charles explained that the pendant was more than just a sentimental item. It was the physical key to a safety deposit box in Switzerland that held the original, undisputed will of Sarah's grandfather, Charles and Alice's father. This document would instantly nullify all of Brenda's fraudulent claims, proving that the vast, hidden wealth belonged solely to the bloodline of Alice, Sarah's mother. "Your mother was the brains, Sarah," Charles revealed, his voice filled with pride. "She met your father when he was just starting out. She used her family's connections and initial capital to build that empire. When she died, my father ensured that everything she built was protected for her child." They landed in Abuja before dawn. The moment they stepped off the jet, the air felt different, colder, sharper, filled with purpose. Charles's security team, led by a stern woman named Helen, escorted them swiftly and silently to the Transcorp Hilton. The presidential suite was not just an apartment, it was a fortress overlooking the entire city. Inside the suite, Sarah was given a fresh wardrobe, a private chef, and medical attention for her cheek. But she couldn't rest. Her mind was racing, fueled by a mixture of outrage and burning ambition. "Uncle Charles," Sarah said later that morning, standing by the massive window overlooking the cityscape. "I don't just want the money, I want them to pay for every single thing they did. For throwing me out for the job, for Mr. Patrick, for the slap. I want Brenda and that lawyer to know that the outcast they discarded is the one who destroyed them." Charles smiled, a cold, predatory glint in his eyes that Sarah recognized immediately as her own newfound resolve. "That's my sister's daughter. Revenge is best served cold, Sarah, and we are going to start with the lawyer." Mr. Henderson, the crooked lawyer, was currently celebrating his latest acquisition, a new, flashy office building in the center of Abuja. Charles knew that Henderson was the weak link. He was greedy, but he was also a coward. Charles made a plan. He contacted a powerful, respected female lawyer named Ms. Gloria. Ms. Gloria was known for her silence, her discretion, and her ability to dismantle legal frameworks built on fraud. Later that afternoon, Ms. Gloria met them at the suite. She listened intently as Sarah recounted the entire story, the sudden death of her father, the forged documents, the eviction, and the fact that the original wealth came from her mother's family. "The case is ironclad, given the pendant and the grandfather's original will," Ms. Gloria confirmed, tapping her pen on a legal pad. But Henderson must crack. We need him to confess to the fraud he committed with Brenda. Charles gave a chilling smile. Leave that to me. I don't need to threaten him with jail time. I need to threaten him with something much worse, losing his license, his reputation, and his life savings. Hey my people, you see how quickly the tables can turn. One moment, Sarah is scrubbing grease off floors, and the next, she's sitting in a presidential suite, plotting the downfall of her enemies with a private legal team. This is what I love about telling stories, fam. We don't just survive, we rise. We bounce back from betrayal with double the force. Drop a like if you're hooked, and don't forget to subscribe to join this storytelling family. If you think Henderson is going to fold immediately or fight back, let me know in the comments. Now let's get back to the plot. Charles and Miss Gloria are setting the trap. The mouse is about to walk into the cheese. The next morning, Mr. Henderson walked into his luxurious new office, feeling invincible. He had just stolen a multi-million naira inheritance and felt like a genius. Then his secretary handed him a letter, a formal summons from a major unnamed investment firm based out of Zurich, Switzerland. The letter demanded an immediate audit of all assets transferred by Sarah's late father, citing unforeseen legal complications regarding original asset ownership. Henderson scoffed. Audits were annoying, but he had Brenda's forged will. He was safe. But then Charles called him. Mr. Henderson. Charles's voice was calm, almost pleasant, but beneath the civility lay a promise of ruin. I understand you've received a notice from Zurich. I also understand you still have the original, sealed copy of my late sister Alice's estate documents, the one you and Brenda destroyed. Henderson's blood ran cold. He gripped his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Who is this? I don't know what you are talking about. Of course you do, Charles chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. I saw my niece last night, Henderson, Sarah, the one you swore was dead, the one who has the twin pendant to mine, the key. Henderson started sweating profusely. This wasn't just about money. This was about the grandfather's ironclad trust, a secret known only to the original family and Charles. You have two options, Charles continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Option 1, you appear before Miss Gloria tomorrow morning, confess everything you and Brenda did. Hand over the documents detailing the fraudulent transfers and testify against Brenda. In exchange, I guarantee you won't spend the rest of your life in jail. You'll lose your license and your reputation, but you'll keep a small percentage of your personal savings. Henderson swallowed hard. And option 2? Option 2, Charles said slowly, is that you are arrested today by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for grand fraud, money laundering and obstruction of justice. Your entire career is ruined. You spend a decade in the worst prison cell I can buy, and you leave your wife and children with nothing but your debts. And guess what? We still get the money back. Henderson's mind raced. He thought of his new office, his brand new car, his family. Brenda was strong, but Charles was power. Charles was the ultimate checkmate. Where do I meet Miss Gloria? Henderson stammered, his voice weak. Charles gave him the location, a discreet conference room in a law firm across town. The trap was set. Sarah, watching Charles from the living room couch, felt a deep, satisfying chill. Justice was unfolding quickly and powerfully, but she knew Brenda hadn't even started fighting yet. The stepmother was dangerous, calculating, and now she was about to be cornered. Later that evening, Charles received a secure file. Henderson's full confession, including the details of how Brenda manipulated her dying husband to sign over power of attorney and how they falsified Sarah's death certificate. It's done, Charles announced to Sarah, holding the confession. The legal noose is around Brenda's neck. We have the confession, we have the proof of fraud. Now we go home. Sarah nodded, but her expression was one of cold focus, not relief. I want to walk into that house, Uncle Charles. I want to see her face when she realizes she lost to the outcast. Charles looked at her, seeing the strength of his sister Alice reflected in her eyes. Then tomorrow, Sarah, we go back to Lagos, and you will reclaim your throne. Henderson has cracked, giving Charles the weapon he needs to destroy Brenda. The stage is set for the final, catastrophic confrontation. Will Brenda submit quietly, knowing the game is up, or will the desperate woman who stole a fortune fight back violently to protect her children's future? Sarah is walking back into the viper's nest. How will the final confrontation play out in the mansion that rightfully belongs to Sarah? And what about Mr. Patrick, who thought he was safe in Lagos? The end of betrayal, justice, and reckoning is coming. You won't believe how this ends. The Mercedes S-Class sedan slowed as it approached the colossal iron gates of the mansion. Sarah sat in the back, no longer the terrified girl thrown out onto the street, but a woman wrapped in a quiet, simmering resolve. Her Uncle Charles sat next to her, looking forward to the inevitable show of power. "Ready, Sarah?" Charles asked, placing a hand on hers. Sarah didn't look at him. She was staring at the windows of the house. "I'm ready to take back what's mine, Uncle, and I'm ready for her to see me." The security guard at the gate, the same man who had slammed the gates shut on her months ago, nearly fainted when he saw Charles step out of the car. He scrambled to open the gates, his hands shaking. The car drove up the winding driveway and stopped right in front of the massive double doors. Charles's security team fanned out, silent and intimidating. Brenda was lounging on the balcony, enjoying her morning tea and the spectacular view of the Lagos lagoon she believed was hers forever. She saw the sleek black conv and frowned. She assumed it was a high-level government official coming to call. But when she saw Charles, her face went blank. Charles, the one man she thought was permanently out of the picture, the man who held the original family power, was standing on her doorstep, and next to him stood Sarah. Brenda dropped her china cup. It shattered on the marble floor below, a sound that finally broke the silence. She rushed downstairs, her composure dissolving into a frenzy of anger and disbelief. Her children, her half-sister and half-brother, peered nervously from the doorway, realizing something terrible was unfolding. "What is the meaning of this, Charles?" Brenda demanded, her voice high and strained, trying desperately to sound authoritative. "You have no right to trespass. And you," she sneered, pointing at Sarah, "you dare show your filthy face here. Get off my property." Sarah stepped forward, holding the silver pendant in her hand, letting it catch the morning light. She no longer whispered. Her voice was clear, strong, and utterly chilling. "It's not your property, Brenda," Sarah stated. "It never was." "The will says otherwise," Brenda spat, stepping forward aggressively. "Mr. Henderson made sure everything was perfectly legal. Mr. Henderson is currently cooperating with my legal team and has given a full confession," Charles interjected calmly, pulling a slim tablet from his inside pocket. "He detailed how you forged the documents after my brother's death, how you falsified Sarah's death certificate, and how you rewrote the will in favor of your own children, eliminating the rightful heiress." Brenda's eyes darted frantically between Charles and Sarah. She was cornered, but she wasn't beaten yet. "Lies, all lies. Henderson is a coward. You threatened him. This is a setup. Get out of my house right now before I call the police." Sarah took another step, placing her feet exactly where Brenda's shattered teacup lay. "Call them, Brenda, please, because they are actually here for you." Just then, two official black SUVs, unmarked but clearly governmental, pulled up quickly behind Charles's convoy. Two stern-faced officers, accompanied by Ms. Gloria, walked towards the door. Brenda's defiance crumbled, her face turned ashen and her knees buckled slightly. No, you can't do this. This is my children's inheritance." "It was never their inheritance," Sarah said, the pain and the betrayal of 18 years fueling her words. "Everything you claimed belonged to my mother, Alice. The core wealth, the one you didn't even know existed, was put in an offshore trust to protect it for her only child. That trust, which has been growing interest for 18 years, is mine. The pendant is the key." Ms. Gloria stepped forward, holding a sheaf of documents. "Mrs. Brenda, by the authority of the court and based on sworn testimony regarding systematic fraud and theft, you are hereby served with an immediate asset freeze and an order for your arrest. You are also being charged with conspiracy alongside Mr. Henderson." As the officers moved to put the handcuffs on Brenda, she started screaming, not in anger but in pure, raw terror. She looked at her children, who were now crying, and then she turned a final, venomous look at Sarah. "You will never win. I will come back for you," she shrieked as the officers led her away. Sarah watched Brenda disappear into the back of the SUV, feeling an overwhelming wave of cold relief. Justice had been served in the very place the injustice began. "Hey, my people, just look at that. The snake has been caged." Brenda thought she was untouchable. She thought she could steal a child's legacy and get away with it. But you know the truth always comes out, and when justice finally knocks, it knocks down the entire house. If you're feeling the power of this moment, the moment Sarah became the master of her own destiny, drop a vindicated in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to join this storytelling family and stay locked in for more powerful stories. But the reckoning is not complete yet, fam. There's one more debt to pay in Lagos, and then we have to see what Sarah does with her new life. Within 48 hours, the mansion was legally Sarah's. Mr. Henderson and Brenda were formally charged and denied bail. The investigation revealed that the fraud was far more intricate than anyone suspected, but the evidence gathered was overwhelming. The truth was out. Sarah's mother brought the fortune, and Sarah was the sole inheritor of the true, hidden empire. Sarah, now the head of a vast, if complicated empire, still had two pieces of unfinished business. First, Mr. Patrick. Charles, ever the pragmatic man of business, handled it swiftly. He didn't want to press a criminal case that would tie Sarah up in Lagos courts for years. Instead, Charles used his resources to expose Mr. Patrick for tax evasion, labour violations, and health code infractions. 1 week after Brenda's arrest, Mr. Patrick's restaurant was padlocked by city authorities. He lost his business, his savings, and faced severe financial ruin. It was a swift, complete destruction that ensured he would never prey on another vulnerable girl again. The second piece of business was Jessica. Sarah drove her back to the small apartment on the mainland. "Jessica," Sarah said, holding a small document, "you saved me. You are the only person who treated me like family when I had nothing. I need a friend, not a servant, to help me run this new life." The document was an offer. Jessica was now Sarah's chief of staff, tasked with managing Sarah's new foundation, a charity Sarah immediately planned to set up to help young, vulnerable women seeking education and housing. The salary offered was life-changing. Jessica wept not because of the money, but because her friend, who had suffered so much, had come back and instantly shared her triumph. Their bond was sealed, built on shared struggle and genuine loyalty. The final and most difficult decision concerned Brenda's children. Sarah's half-sister and half-brother were now homeless, living with a distant, disapproving aunt. They were victims of their mother's greed. Charles advised Sarah to take everything, as was her legal right. "They are Brenda's blood, Sarah. You owe them nothing." But Sarah remembered the blank, scared looks on their faces as their mother was led away. She remembered what it felt like to be abandoned. Sarah stood in her new, empty living room, the pendant warm against her heart. She realized her transformation wasn't about revenge, it was about healing. She called Ms. Gloria and gave the instruction. The properties Brenda had bought under her own name, a small apartment building in Eicher and the car, were to be sold. The proceeds after taxes were to be placed in an anonymous trust for her half-siblings, to fund their education only. "I won't leave them with nothing," Sarah told Charles. "I won't be Brenda, I will give them the chance that was taken from me." Charles looked at his niece, a profound respect in his eyes. He realized that Sarah was not just Alice's daughter, she was the best version of her entire family's legacy, powerful, intelligent, but deeply compassionate. The battle was over, the outcast was home. Sarah sat on the balcony of the mansion that night, watching the Lagos lights twinkle, her lights now. She was surrounded by wealth, security, and the love of her uncle. She had justice, she had dignity. But she also knew this was just the beginning. The world of billion-dollar trusts and international business was far more dangerous than scrubbing pots or sleeping in a motor park. She had won the first battle against betrayal, but a true empire required constant vigilance. Was the end of her quest for justice simply the start of a much greater, more perilous fight to protect the vast inheritance her mother had secured for her? The heiress was found, but the drama of keeping the empire had only just begun. Thank you so much, my people. That's the end of Sarah's incredible journey from outcast to heiress. What an emotional rollercoaster. Drop a comment if you think Sarah made the right decision about her half-siblings, and don't forget to subscribe to join this storytelling family.